Hello there, dear viewers, and welcome to attaQ. My name is Jakob. I'm your host, and you're watching a attaQ episode. And in this episode, we're having a look at Rymdigare. It's in Swedish. Erik Sights, the developer, is Swedish, so that's why I'm reading it in Swedish. And it means, if you translate it directly, spacier as in outer space. Even though you could use rymd to describe a space instead of out. Well, I've been waiting for the opportunity to finally release this video and try to decode Rymdigare for all of you wanting to know exactly what this thing is, because it is a weird one. Whenever Erik puts out a new app, I'm always asking myself, what does it look like? Why? Because Erik is an artist and he's very good at what he does. He makes the cutest art I've ever seen, the coziest art I've ever seen. I just love his stuff. And he translates that into his apps, and so his apps look eclectic and interesting, which also makes it very hard to kind of discern what things are doing in an app. And so I'm gonna try to decode space. I'm gonna try to decode space. I want to give you this tip. Use the app for at least 20 minutes. And then maybe when something happens like this, well, you restart the app and use it for another 20 minutes. Now that's all I'm going to say about it, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Just know that if you miss something in the app when something is happening, you'll have this icon here so you can kind of replay whatever happened. Okay, so we're gonna do an overview of the app, and Rymdigare is a multi-effects processor, basically. So at the top, we have the on-off switch for the input. Under that, we have the blend mode or the wetness control right here. And then we've got a filter here to the side with cutoff, resonance, low pass, band pass, and high pass, of course. And then under that, we have something called radio. Now this is a noise and drone machine with 4 controls. You have volume, band, and then you have these two. This one is called antenna angle, and this one is time dilation compensation. Now there are 2 dots over here, and if we press them, we get this thing. Now the noise in here can actually be tuned to a key. Now to the side of that, we have a wave shaper, kind of a distortion device where you can put it into pre or post. Under that, we've got a reverb, and this reverb is interesting because it can also work as kind of a weird tap delay. It can do many things, and this is something we are going to experiment with a lot in this episode. Now the reverb has 5 controls: size, ratio, feedback, and then it's got this one, reverb tail, and this one, reverberator way skew. Now these are not normal controls, and this is why we're gonna experiment a lot with it, so you can actually hear what's what's going on when we're using this. Now, as I said, you can use this as a delay, which makes it interesting for rhythmical stuff, right? And so you can actually sync this to BPM if you press over here. And over here, you can have it tuned. So the reverberation gets tuned to whatever key you've chosen up here. Well, underneath the reverb, we have a reverb kind of randomizer thing. When we tweak around with stuff here, it will do stuff with the reverb controls. Now under that, we have an octave shifter, and this is interesting because when you've got the reverb set to like pure reverb, so it sounds more like a reverb and not so much as a delay, then if you use the up amount here, for instance, it starts sounding like a shimmer reverb. And this one is also like a shimmer reverb, but it goes down in pitch instead. It's really, really useful, and it makes this entire unit so interesting to work with. Now, the last box down here is where we find a planetary system without a sun, and these are actually LFOs. Now, if I pull on this one, for instance, we can see that one of the planets are starting to move quicker. Now, we can even modulate the LFOs themselves or with the other LFOs, and we can use these LFOs to modulate other stuff up here. So let's start by modulating N1, 2 here by double tapping on it. That's how you open up the modulation, and now we see this thing. Now, right now we haven't chosen a modulation source. Here is where you choose the sources. If I press this once, it says attaQ. That means it's now listening to this one. But if I pull this one, it doesn't really do anything with the orbit of N1, 2. Why? Well, if we go back and double tap on N1, 2, we can see that it says 0%. And that's because we haven't really set the amount of modulation we want to use from attaQ A239 here. So we're going to pull this up, and now we start seeing something happening with the orbit of N1, 2. Now it's being modulated by A239. I wish more developers did visual stuff like this for LFOs and things, because it would make it easier for people to kind of discern what's going on in an app. If we wanted to use this for anything else, we could just scroll up here and we could go to the filter, for instance, to cut off and double tap. And here we can set what we want to use. Let's use N1, 2 here. And now we set that, and there we see the modulation. And if I pull this down, we can see that little line there showing us exactly how the modulation is working. That's how straightforward it is. Now I'm going down to the reverb here, and I'm gonna pull up on size a bit. We need to pull up on feedback, ratio. So I'm sending a pulse through it right now. Now if we pull this up a little bit, the space in between the delays gets further apart. We do it a little bit more, even further, and up. longer delays. If we go down, it gets shorter. Even further down, short. Now, if we put it into the middle here instead, we get something that sounds more swelling. If we pull up on feedback, it starts sounding more like longer delays. I did these tests during the weekend while I was working on this video, and to make a really like wet, long, swashed out reverb, what you do is you put the ratio at about a 50 or thereabouts. You put this one close to the middle like this, and then you pull the feedback to the middle like this. And you start getting really swashed out sounds. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what we're dealing with. Now, we are going to go down to variations and mess around with this. Now, if I add a mount here, you can hear it starts getting pitched. So let's do that a little bit less. It starts sounding like a chorus. Add some variation, some time. A little bit more. Very interesting. Now let's go down to the octave shifter and add some shimmering. You hear that? Well, there we go. I hope that gives you an idea of what you can do with Rymdigare. And I might even cover this app again just to dive in a little bit deeper with some sound experimentation so you can really hear what you can do with this thing. It's a lot of fun. It's an interesting multi-effects processor, and the little extra added story element in here, love it, Erik. It's good work, good work. And thank you so much, Erik, for the artwork you did for my thumbnail. Thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this video, then why don't you give me a thumbs up? If you didn't like this video, give me a thumbs down. If you want to support me, then throw a comment in below. Tell us what you think about Rymdigare here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, I also got a Patreon and PayPal, and you can find my Discord if you go down into the description and look at all the links there, where you'll also find some links to my music if you want to go and check that out and support me financially. And if you don't want to do any of it, that's okay too. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now, go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. Okay, so we are going to do an overview of Rymdigare, and I'll show you what's actually in here. First of all, it's a multi-effects processor, and it's a little bit more than that because it's also a story app. And I want to give you this tip. Use the app for at least 20 minutes, and then maybe